Hey folks, so if you've been following me at all, I've been doing some videos to help people better understand their MRI results and their CT results. We had a fellow come in this week and he had been told that he has something called degenerative disc disease. And so he didn't know what that was. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attempt to explain what degenerative disc disease is, what causes it, and what you can do about it. All right, I'm back. So what I like to do is I like to draw some diagrams on transparency so you can see exactly what it is I'm talking about. Now you're looking at the spine. This diagram is modeled after the lower back, which is the number one place where you'll experience something called degenerative disc disease. And oftentimes on your MRI result or on your CT scan, it will show just the letters DDD. Stands for degenerative disc disease. And the most common place for degenerative disc disease is actually in the lower back, and the second most common is in the neck. So what you're looking at here is the bone, the front of the bone, and this part of the spine right in through here, that's the part of the spine when you reach back and you can feel your spine. That's the part that you're actually feeling. It's called the spinous spine. That's supposed to be an S. O-U-S. My goodness. Process. The disc is the part that we're talking about, the degenerative disc disease. It's a significant source of low back and neck pain. The disc is the part that's in the middle here, right? So between every bone, there is a disc. And if you notice in through here, you can see that the discs are all about the same thickness. So if you look at the top ones here, I intentionally drew the space in between these vertebrae these spinal bones as being very narrow, and I'm coloring them in red. Even this one is more narrow than all the other ones. So experts, we love to disagree with each other, and so a lot of us will disagree on what actually constitutes degenerative disc disease. But really the two things that most of us will agree on is, one is that there is a loss of disc space, okay, as you can see in these three segments compared to, see how thick these three areas are? So one of the criteria for degenerative disc disease that most of us will agree on is a loss of disc space, and the other one is we start to see extra bone growth at the front. Okay, we start to see all this extra bone growth at the front, and that extra bone growth, you may know it as the term bone spurs. Bone spurs, and the official term is something called osteophytes. There's a number of theories that have been laid out to what makes the difference between joints that have degenerative disc disease and joints that don't. The best explanation that I've heard, very simply, is that at some point something happened to those lower joints to allow them to start this degenerative process. Well, what is that? Let's go back over to the pictures. I'm going to draw a picture of what this disc looks like looking at it from the top. And if you watch some of my other videos, you've seen me do this. At the center of the disc, probably the most important part of the disc is called the nucleus. If you've done any biology in the past, you've learned of the nucleus of a cell. Well, the disc has a nucleus also, and we call it the nucleus pulposus. It's like a marble. It's filled with a gel-like substance, and hydration, or the amount of water content in the center, in this nucleus pulposus, is really, really important. Now, the way I want you to think about it is that the nucleus is relatively delicate, and so it needs protection. And the rest of the disc is created a little bit with these fibrous rings, kind of like the rings of a tree. And they're very tough, and they are not bouncy. So I just want to reiterate, this whole idea of a disc being a shock absorber is hooey. It's not at all. These outer rings is called the annulus, or the annulus fibrosus. And there are these very fibrous outer rings that are there essentially, this is how I want you to think about it, to protect the nucleus. Now, when I went to chiropractic school, I thought that all of my patients that were going to come in here were going to be coming in as from some sort of a big sort of one-shot injury. And that's not been the case at all. The vast majority of the people that are in my office are not construction workers, they're not farmers, they're not people who are laboring with their bodies, they're office workers. It's repetitive strain that starts to degenerate their spine. A properly functioning spine is one that's going to move with grace and with ease. So in this model, each one of these balls represents one of the spinal bones, and each bone should have its own range of motion. The problem starts to happen with degenerative disc disease is when the spine undergoes too much stress, too much sitting, not enough exercise that's way too strenuous, slips and falls and things like that. But where there is a slight misalignment in these vertebrae, they're called micro dysfunction, tiny little misalignments where the spine now becomes rigid. Instead of it being fluid, it is now becoming rigid. Now what starts to happen when there's a rigidity is that the disc at a micro level, they start to become a little bit damaged. And maybe a little bit of a tear right in through here, maybe a little bit more damage there. Because now the bones, these bones, say the disc is in the middle, these bones aren't behaving the way they should. There's a micro dysfunction there, micro misalignment. And now there's excess strain on the disc, and it results in these tiny little tears and damages to the spine. And well, the body tries to heal it, and it will, it'll bring in inflammation, and it will try and heal these little tears. And it does, though, very intelligently. It does the best it can, but it uses something called, wait for it, it uses something called scar tissue. And scar tissue is weaker than normal tissue, more prone to injury, and stiffer than normal tissue. So guess what happens now? The normal mechanics of the spine are altered even more. So now there's even more chance for these micro misalignments, and the process continues and the disc degenerates. Eventually the damage and the tears, they grow and they start to become more extensive with time. And this will happen if the spine or the normal movement of the spine is never restored. Here's the kicker though, at the early stages of this, there are no symptoms. In the early stages, you have no idea that this is happening until this process gets worse and worse and worse. And now what starts to happen is you get these little chemicals that are released from the disc, and they go out into the space and they irritate the nerves surrounding your spine. The mechanics continue to get worse, and now your body will start to use the muscles in your spine to try and brace it and prevent more damage. So this is one of the times when you start to actually feel this process. Not only are the chemicals leaking out to irritate nerves, and even if you don't feel that, your body will sense the instability. The problem is in your spine, but it will use muscle to brace or cast the spine in order to protect it. Because inside that spine there are delicate nerves that are connecting your brain to all your different body parts, including your legs, your digestive tract, your uterus, everything. So now here's the question. What do you do about this? I actually have 4 things that I want you to do about this. The first thing is to discard the notion that degenerative disc disease is an inevitable part of aging. I believe that is completely false. But number 2, we clearly know, there's no doubt about this, that the early stages of degenerative disc disease, the early stages of spinal instability, they have no symptoms. And they have no symptoms despite the fact that there are micro misalignments in the spine. Number 3, the DIY component of this is to keep your body moving. One of the reasons why your spine starts to break down is because of immobility, these micro misalignments where the spine gets jammed up. There's no other way to call it but locked up. Keep an active lifestyle. That's something you can do that can greatly decrease your chances of having degenerative disc disease. Number 4, remember number 2. Don't assume that because you feel just fine, or if you get occasional pain and then it goes away, that there is no problem. We know without a doubt that the symptoms of degenerative disc disease will ebb and flow. They will come and they will go. That rhymed. That was unintentional. That's where chiropractic care comes in. The role of chiropractic from a day-to-day basis is to restore those micro misalignments back into normal movement, reducing the odds that the damage will get to a point where you start to get the thinning of the disc, all those bone spurs, all that inflammation, the misery, the pain, the disability, the pills, missing out on the activities you love to do, sports, family, playing with your kids, going out for a drive. These are all the things that I hear about on a day-to-day basis in this office, how degenerative disc disease is robbing people of their lives. If you're suffering from back pain, even if it ebbs and flows, what I'd urge you to do is give our office a call. And what I see in my office is that we can help slow down, even arrest this process. I'm happy to do a consultation with you. There's no charge to talk. And if you want to go further, we'll always make the room for a complete exam and motion x-rays. So if you like this video, found it useful, click on the subscribe button. I always make videos to help you get well, stay well, live a better life. I'm Dr. Paul Groulx, chiropractor in Ottawa and Merivale Road. We'll talk soon.